I don't think anyone imagined that the NWA brand would go from where it was a year ago to where it is right now.
Yeah.
And this is no disrespect to Tim Storm. It really isn't. But let's face it, I don't know if we would be perceiving this championship title and this NWA brand the way we are right now if Tim Storm was still the champion.
Sure, that's fair. And I think that he would be the first one to acknowledge that as well. I think that I love the fact that one of the things that we talked about very early on was there's a story in everything. You know, instead of this sort of old school, P.T. Barnum kind of approach of like, the marks believe whatever we tell them to believe. We just said, well, we don't need to make them believe anything. We'll take the real story and we'll embellish that and make that into a compelling piece of content. Mm-hmm. And so we took the fact that Tim was, virtually unknown, with the exception of the sort of regional independence he was doing in that sort of Texas area. And we said, but to him, this is his, like he said in one of the early episodes, that was his mountaintop. And that's great, because people started to relate and be like, he's a good dude. Like, okay, he's not the most talented guy I've ever seen. He's not, he's not box office, but damn it, this guy's compelling and I like him. And then to contrast with me, I'm totally comfortable, and Bully will tell you this and other people, I'm totally comfortable that, with the fact that there are areas of my personality that push people's buttons. So we said, let's take those areas, and there's the story. There's this young guy who seemingly got a lot of opportunities that someone like Tim didn't get because either he didn't put himself in that position, or they just didn't come that way, or he just decided to take a different path. And let's take the fact that this guy's 52, 53, what he was at the time. This is his big moment, but now I've decided I want it, and I'm like a shark, and I'm going to come and take it. And it's like, that's something everyone can relate to in their lives, like people who have lost their jobs, or people who, someone else has come along and sort of taken their spot and stuff like that. And then for me, there was also two fans who were familiar with me. There was a different element of it where they went, he had all these opportunities, then they kind of dried up, and we weren't really sure what he was going to do next. And, there's multiple layers, because the real story, like I'm sure Billy touched on, the crazy sort of behind the scenes stuff of TNA. There's so much real stuff going on that there really isn't that much need to create that much in the beginning, because whatever you have is the best thing to start with. It's the great launching point.
Nick, I knew you when you were 21. I know you now when you're 31. At this stage of the game, what would you say is your biggest strength and your biggest weakness?
Well, certainly my biggest strength is I think, short of someone who'd had a run in WWE, like I feel like there's not that many guys at my age who have the experiences that I have. And obviously that, with that comes a lot of maturity. The best way the easiest thing to learn from is mistakes. You certainly come in and you think that you have it all figured out, and then you come to realize that you don't. And this year, for the first time, and I've had this conversation with numerous guys, like Tommy Dreamer, and I had this conversation in Australia, and a few different people. Mick Foley was very complimentary, and they said, you just watching you now feels different. Like it's nice, watching a guy kind of who's hitting his stride. And that's how I felt this year, which is ironic to say, because when you think about what some of the opportunities I've had extended to me earlier in my career, it's like, I think back sometimes, I think, God, imagine if I was hitting my stride and I was getting those opportunities now. But, that is what it is. I know that if you articulate your beliefs and you really, and you're confident in your ability to show everyone what you can do, those opportunities will present themselves again and again. You attract that to yourself. Weakness wise, I guess sometimes, like anyone, there are times where you can be. I have to be careful not to sit back. I have to be careful I have to make sure to keep evolving and up in my game, and not get too comfortable. It's nice when people are saying nice things about you, but I've always been one of those guys that doesn't take praise very well. Like, I'm always kind of like, thanks. I don't know what to say now. But you don't want to get in a comfort zone. And that's something I have to work on every day, is like, look, you've got your stuff that works, but now we need to get some more stuff that works. And cut out some of the stuff that maybe doesn't work as well as it could. Keep evolving and keep up in your game.
One of the things that we talked about on the show yesterday was just as for myself as an old school fan that grew up watching the NWA. September 1st, that this NWA championship is going to be defended in front of a sold out crowd of over 10,000 fans. When you first won that title, and I mean that you really are, in essence, the only true world heavyweight champion in wrestling. You're the only person that really takes that title and will go anywhere to defend it. It's not a roster that travels around. You are kind of like, you are the NWA brand. You're almost one and the same. Did you think you would ever have that kind of opportunity to be defending that title that has so much history behind it, but to bring it back to the point where you're defending it in front of a sold-out crowd of 10,000 fans?
Honestly, yes. I did believe that. I visualized it from the beginning. My ultimate goal with this was to bring the big fight feel back to an NWA World Championship match. Like Ric Flair and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. These NWA title matches that had that feeling to them where people went, this is what I came to see, this is big, and it's a championship match, like there's something different about this. That's why from the very beginning, whether it's in front of 50 people or 10,000, I've made a point from the beginning, and I've had a lot of pull on the production side of things, as far as especially at live events, where I made a point to say, this is how we do an NWA title match. We do in-ring introductions, we do in-ring instructions with the referee. It's presented like a title fight. It's presented like a big fight feel, because if you believe it and you have, it starts with you. It starts like in your eyes, and people see it. And if you don't believe it, or if it is even a second where you don't believe that you're carrying yourself, and you really believe that you're the world's champion, you're done. And I've had my peers, which is the hardest people to impress in this line of work. I knew that we were doing things right when guys who I've known for years, who worked with me in TNA all through my run there, were coming up to me and going, "There's something different about you now, like just the way that you're carrying yourself." And it wasn't an arrogant thing. It was just like, when you strap that belt on and you go out, like you can tell, like that. There were the guys who have told me, that's the world champion. I was sat here with Mark Henry, who I think I'd met Mark maybe once, maybe twice, like when WWE had come through town in Orlando once, and I think maybe I'd met him at the Hall of Fame before. And for him to sit there and say, like, you're giving off the right vibe here, like you're like a man, I feel like you're the world champion. Like, that was such a huge thing for me, but it bolstered me, because I went, yeah, I do feel like it, because I believe that I am, and I believe in this championship. I believe in this brand.
Nick, in wrestling, whether it's a wrestling match or whether it's our careers, we always need a backup plan. We always need a plan B. September 2nd comes along and you win the match. Obviously, you need no plan B, because you are on top of the world, defeating Cody at All In, basically his show. But what if things don't exactly go right? What if you don't win the match? What is your plan B?
Well, I'm investing in my brand, and yes, like a big part of my brand is the fact that I'm the NWA champion, but I'm also the guy who can now point to and say, that's the guy that brought the NWA title not just back to relevance, but back to prominence. So it's a, the way I present myself and carry myself. Look, you get back on the horse. That's it. If someone's got to win and someone's got to lose, and I believe in that in title matches. I don't believe in, there are a multitude of opportunities that will come along. As far as where to go next, we already have a lot of other plans that that we're not ready to discuss yet. But hey, Cody will be an excellent NWA World Champion. Whether what he has to do now, if he is successful, was that he now not only has to win it, but he also has to live up to what I've done with the championship. And if he can't, then I'll take it from him. And in the meantime, I continue to grow and evolve my brand by wrestling new opponents and continuing to prove that that I'm one of the premier guys in the business today.
It's funny. Come September 1st, in front of that crowd, and I know you're used to being booed when you go out to the ring, but this even goes beyond that because there's so many fans that are especially going to be in attendance for that show that are going to want to see your Rhodes holding that NWA championship above their head. So it's not only like you're wrestling a man, but you're also, in a way, wrestling a whole movement.
Yeah. Well, that's the business we're in. Ultimately, my job as champion is to make people care and to make them want to see either me be dethroned or me to retain. The fact that it means so much to people on so many different levels, but I'd also like to point out that we have our own core fan base, and there is a thread. If you look through the YouTube comments and you look through our social channels, there's a movement of people that are buying what I'm selling. It's not like, it's Cody's show, and that's fine. Ultimately, my job is done. I won it in front of 600 assholes in New Jersey who didn't care, and now
599 plus
whatever,
me.
Sure. Okay. And then now it's going to be, 10,000 plus of every single person is invested in that, the occasional troll that's going to say, man, but at the end of the day, like, those tickets were sold.
Yeah.
And people care about this. This is absolutely the biggest match of my career. And that in itself that's what we get into this business to do, and I've done it. And so now we move on to the next.
Nick, with Cody not living up to his end of the bargain, it seemed like you had all the cards in your hand. How come you didn't hold the gun to his head a little harder?
Some of that is information that we chose not to disclose.
Okay.
Like, at the end of the day, it's the professional wrestling business, emphasis on professional. And we want what's best for everybody, and the benefit you have as champion is being able to, command a price tag for someone to have a championship match. And if that's what he wants, then let's make it work.
In wrestling these days, with heels and baby faces and good guys and bad guys, I think the lines have been blurred more than ever. Lots of people, lots of shades of gray. All In is Cody's baby. All In, Cody wrestles for the championship that is synonymous with his father. If you are able to go into All In and defeat Cody in front of 10,145 people and basically ruin the night for him and his fans and his family, do you think people respect you more or hate you more?
I think, but those things that depends on how it's done. But if it was done in a dishonorable way, then the hatred would be justified and it would be there. If it's done the correct way, people might not like it, but they will have to respect it.
You mentioned about All In being sold out in 30 minutes, and the show kind of sells itself because it's almost like a renegade show, and people want to be involved in it.
I think it's a Renaissance show.
Okay, how I feel about it, what's selling me, what's gonna make me attend that card is you and Cody. Like, if anybody needs a reason to be a part of All In, it's because of the story that you and Cody are selling and telling. And I truly believe that, because, and to me, and I don't know what's going to take place on September 1st. I don't know what's going to be the card, what's going to start the show, what's going to end the show. In my eyes, that NWA Championship should be the main event of All In. You and Cody in the ring should be the last match, and either you and Cody holding that NWA Championship should be the final thing we see in that show. Do you agree with that?
I agree that it's the featured attraction. It's not my say on what closes the show, what opens the show. I'd like to also point out that All In is absolutely the Young Bucks production as much as Cody's, if not more. The Nick and Matt have spent many years and took a chance on themselves long before before Cody did. In fairness to Cody, he's done a tremendous job betting on himself, and I've told him that. And look, that to me is the whole culture of All In. It's a bunch of guys who bet on themselves. Who didn't just place all their value in like, well, as long as I have to be under contract somewhere. I just wrote my last column about this where I said like, the culture of the business with my generation and younger has to change in the sense that guys need to stop looking to as the finishing line being getting signed. That's not the finish line. Okay, your goal should be to draw money and to generate interest in your match and people paying to see you or people wanting to see you and being compelled by the content you're putting out. Getting signed doesn't mean shit. Let's face it. Like, especially now with some of the deals that are being handed out, like, the people keep asking me, why you the WWE UK? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, not to disparage any of those guys, but like, I deposited more money in my bank account, in 1 week than some of those guys, are going to make in like half a year from that contract. That's not a knock on them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's business. But at the end of the day, it's like, why would I do that? Right? Because I'm betting on myself. Ask Marty Scurll how he's doing financially this year. He's crushing it. Okay, and like the idea of there are still fans out there who are just in this notion that like, yeah, but when are you going to go to WWE? When are you going to get signed? To get signed? Like, do you know what these contracts? Like, some of these contracts are what they're offering. Like, that's like step one. And I think the reason I feel like All In is such an important show, not just such a pivotal show as far as like the business, but very important for the future of the business, is that it's a renaissance. This is the fact that the NWA title is on it is just such a perfect amalgamation of all these different belief systems all coming together and intersecting at this event. Because when you look back at the NWA, yes, you could argue that it was a little bit of a cartel sort of situation going on there and a little bit of a trust thing going on. But ultimately, it was a bunch of guys like Dusty, Flair, Steamboat, Harley, even going back further, Jack Briscoe. These were guys who they were their own man. They're their own boss. And like, you want to book me? You want to work with me? These are the terms. This is what we do. And we work together and we figure it out. And that's what we've done. Cody and I, this feels real because it is real. Every single part of this has been discussed and negotiated between me and him, between Billy and them, Ring of Honor and Billy and Dave. And ultimately, because we're all going, okay. And Bully's been involved in some of this. He was there. It's like, look, this is what we need to achieve. This is what you need to achieve. How do we, work this together? And I truly believe that that's when you get these moments. That's when you get the best in this business, not when it's like this sort of sterilized, okay, well, this is what we're doing and that's it. Like, it's great that you did all this work to get to this point, but now you just belong to us and you just, you do whatever we tell you. And it's great that you have these ideas and that's really cute, but, just keep those to yourself and just do what we tell you. Like, why would you do that? Let's harness what people bring to the table, especially in their brains. This is a bunch of guys with brains here. I tend to avoid being too opinionated about the product and stuff like that because, the whole business is subjective, right? And there's no point. It's absolutely not worth, upsetting anyone or burning a bridge based on your interpretation of an art, and especially like with my wife working there and stuff like that. So it's more about, I tend to just try to, gush about like my favorite elements of the business or just tell funny stories or whatever. But it's cool. It's very cathartic to get to write. And it's nice that anytime someone comes to me at like a signing or anything, and they go, I really like your column. I don't know why, but on a different level, it's a really good feeling to know that someone gives a shit about something I've written on a page. It's just really cool.
And it's funny because you have the more positive article, and then a couple pages you have Jim Cornette that goes in a completely different direction.
Jimmy is, he's very opinionated, and that we love that about Jimmy.
Nick, if you are able to retain against Cody at All In, what is next for you opponent-wise?
Wow.
Who would you...
Coming in with the big gut, just right off the bat. Anything is possible. Let's go back for a second and think about even when I sat in this studio back in March. And we were discussing that I was defending against Tommy in Philadelphia, and that was a preliminary example of what we were starting to do, go into other people's houses, and face their best with the NWA title on the line. And that was the point. And that was our new updated version of the previous NWA champion model. Now we're doing it with the top guy in Ring of Honor. I walked straight into that company, straight into a top angle with the top guy, because I'm the NWA world champion. Does it stop there? I don't think so. I think I can go anywhere. And I mean anywhere. It's my understanding.
Okay, hold on.
Go on.
All right. Okay, when you say anywhere, obviously everybody listening to this show, all our fan base is going to take anywhere as the WWE.
They can take it however they want to take it. It's my understanding that a certain man who has a lot of power in that company, who I have modeled a lot of myself after over the years, has a replica of the 10 pounds of gold on his office wall. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is, if he ever wants an opportunity to hold the real one in his hands, all he's got to do is pick up the phone.
I'm not a hard guy to find. I love it. I love it. Can I spell it out for everybody, please?
If they need it, then I think
they probably figured it out by now. But
very good. I like that. I like that a lot, because that
a year ago, no one would have thought that we'd be doing this. So who's to say?
I like that, because the man you are speaking about is very much a fan, if not a mark, for that belt.
Well, I wouldn't use that term.
Why not?
Because it's it's unbecoming.
No. I don't listen. As wrestlers,
I don't have the grapefruits.
As wrestlers, we were all marks for something at one point of our life or another.
I was a mark for him.
There you go. And I like that plan. That is a well thought out plan. Kudos to you.
Well.
Lure him out of his comfort zone,
and it might be a chance for me to to prove the little birds that he's got buzzing around him that have been burying me to him. That he's been making an ill-informed decision when he had the chance.
Good. I like that. Follow that, Dave.
It's gonna be difficult to do, but I'll try. I mentioned we had Billy Corgan in studio, and one thing I asked Billy Corgan about was, the suspect booking that he's been putting you through, as far as not informing you, how you've been informed of certain title matches. And his take was, hey, when I'm signed to a certain record company, I'm at their beck and call. They book me wherever they want to book me, and I have to follow. And that's pretty much what Billy said about that. What do you feel about that? And have you taken it as a slight, the way you found out about some of these bookings?
No, it's gamesmanship. I mean, look, it's not going to generate any interest or generate any eyeballs if I just mow through everybody, in every single world championship defense. Okay. So in some of these instances, Billy's felt the need to, keep me on my toes a little bit. That's just gamesmanship. That's what a promoter should do. I understand that. He understands that. We're friends. We understand, we coexist. It doesn't mean that in the heat of the moment, sometimes I can get a little bit, if I've just wrestled a match, and you have to understand something. Every time I have a NWA World Championship defense, I kiss that belt, I hand it over to the referee. As in my mind, I'm not the champion anymore. The championship's up for grabs. So every time I win it, I just won the World Championship again. So it's a very high emotional toll. Mm-hmm. So to sometimes to go straight from that and to have no respite and just immediately, out of the frying pan into the fire, to be like, oh, now you're wrestling this guy. It can be emotionally taxing, but to be the top guy in this business, you have to exercise that muscle. So I understand what he's doing, and look where it's led us. It's the same with lifting weights, or how you approach your body with your diet and everything. It's an adaptation to stress, and the adaptation to the stress that we have put ourselves through, with this schedule and this, this challenge that we put ourselves, has got us to where we are now. Chicago, Illinois, September 1st, 10,000 plus NWA title on the line. It's a big night.
Absolutely.
Nick, let's talk about one of your friends for a second in the business. Let's talk about Marty Scurll. How do you think Marty's doing?
He's killing it. He's doing fantastic. I mean, I would like to sit back and take all the credit for my success. I'd like to do that, but I can't, you know, but I will say that nobody went to bat for him more than me in the early years, because I knew what he had from the beginning. We've been friends since, like, I would start going to Dropkicks Wrestling School. I trained with the Knights, who are Paige's mum and dad and their whole family. But they were only running like a camp once a month, and they had the very, you know, they were all making a living from wrestling, so they had to run shows. They were running holiday camps and all this stuff, so they would basically run training camps whenever they could fit it in their schedule, and I knew I needed more reps, so I started going to this other school down in London. Me and my friends would all pack into our little, you know, beat up car, and we'd drive 3.5 hours every Sunday. Frank, the trainer at the time, came to me and asked me if I could start giving this kid a ride from Littleport, which is in Cambridgeshire. And, you know, we looked at this little scrawny, like, brown-haired kid, and we were kind of like, oh, God, you know, like, I'll give this kid a ride every week now. Within 3 weeks, we were, like, inseparable. That was Marty. He was 16. I think I was 17 or 18. And you know, we've been friends ever since, and we've come up every level of this business together, and now he's, you know, in many ways he's surpassed me, you know, and I'm happy with that. But, you know, at the end of the day, we look at it as like, we're all just stallions in this race, and we're all, you know, we have moments where one of us pulls ahead, one of us pulls back, one of us pulls ahead, and it's like we love it. I love watching him succeed, and he like as he has, you know, in many years, you know, watched me succeed and have these moments, you know, and it's like I can't say enough about his success, and he's inspired me. You know, part of the reason I'm sitting here now in this position is because I had to take a moment where I said, you've either got to get out of this business, or you've got to, like, slap yourself around a bit and start, like, you know, taking account, like, hold yourself accountable.
So you had that moment,
yeah,
where you had to sit back and really make a decision?
After Global Force, like, when that, you know, when that sort of, you know, evaporated, and I tore my bicep at the end of 2015, you know, and that was a really rough surgery and a very rough recovery and stuff like that. And you know, obviously I have always held a lot of my sort of personal value and stuff in my physique and my fitness and stuff like that. And when, you know, there are pictures of me where I just look like death and I look horrible, and I just was, you know, I came back too soon because I had a kid to feed. And I just looked at myself and went like, what are you doing? I had no imagination, no ideas, no, you know, I felt like my body of work, because of Impact and TNA, and because of the ill will that they had earned themselves, which was, you know, completely out of my control. But I felt like my body of work had been sort of forgotten, because, you know, like the fact that I submitted Sting on a pay-per-view, you know, I've beaten Jeff Hardy, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, you know, Bobby Roode, all these guys who have now gone on to have all this success. And I went like, what's going on here? You know, I felt like I'd just been put to the side, and I went, but you have, so what? Like, who cares? Like, tomorrow's another day. And I started to see the success Marty was having, and the Bucks and stuff like that. And I went, okay, it's time to hit this from a different angle, and, you know, take a different approach. Because I knew I had the aptitude mentally. It was just, you know, there was something holding me back. And so he plays a big part in that.
Nick, you mentioned TNA for a second. I just want to get your take. You were there for a long time. We were there together, and along with a lot of other people. Isn't it amazing how the place could be so great at times, but yet has left such a bad taste in people's mouths because of the way things went there? It's
unbelievable. Like, people, I don't think, and I used to say this at the time, but I think it's really unfair how people never stood back and appreciated how much that company achieved in such a short period of time. Like, to go from 2002, you know, to then when I joined in 2009, it was the highest rated show on Spike. It was doing close to 2 million viewers, I think, and it had all these names, and it had a, you know, very high production value show. It was, you know, by fast forward to like 2010, 11, 12, we had a full house show touring model. It gave me everything, and I would never have had the education. You know, I can feel comfortable saying this, but I'm 99% certain that a couple of times during those early years, I could have gone to developmental at WWE, and I chose to stay with TNA because I looked at the landscape and went, I had friends in developmental who were miserable. You know, this was before NXT and the Performance Center, because they were all wrestling each other in, little spot shows around Tampa and stuff, and, being made to do all these annoying sort of remedial jobs and stuff. And they were kind of like, I've paid my dues.
Yeah.
Like, why am I being made to do this again? Like, they treated everyone like they hadn't paid any dues, and like it left a sour taste in a lot of guys' mouths. And I went, I'm sitting here getting to work with Bully and Devon. I'm working with beer money. I get to sit under the learning tree of Sting and Kevin Nash, Kurt Angle, Booker T. I'm working with AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. Doug Williams is my tag partner. Like, I'm getting such an education here that I wouldn't get, like, going to wrestling school.
Plus, you have the exposure of almost 2 million people.
Well,
once a week watching the show too.
I understood very early on that even that works two ways, because there's a lot of me that should not have been exposed that early on. I was the shits. Like, I shouldn't have been on TV that much. Like, but I'm not. But who's gonna say I'm not really very good, guys? Like, I don't think you should put me on TV. You don't know that at the time. Obviously, I look back now and go, God, Lee, I was awful. But that in itself is a learning thing, is to have that self-awareness, to know what what works and what doesn't. And so I'm very proud of what I did there, because I worked every spot on that card. I worked dark match, explosion. A lot of the time I would show up and not booked. You talk about the Young Bucks. One of the reasons why we've stayed close and why they've been happy to extend opportunities to me when they can and stuff like that and work with us, is because we were all in that forgotten locker room. Me, the Young Bucks, Okada. I mean, they told TNA, New Japan told TNA, this guy's going to be he's going to be our franchise player. Not is probably going to be, is going to be. And they still, they
treat him like garbage.
Yeah, I mean, but we were all there. We were all there playing gator golf in the dressing room because we weren't booked, and and all this stuff. And so for me to then, I stuck it out. There was another chance probably in 13 where I may or may not have had a chance to go, and I stuck it out because I felt at that point, I said, I feel like if I stay here I could become the world champion. And that, it wasn't about being the world champion, it was about seeing it through to the end and proving that I could like work through all this nonsense and prove myself to be a top guy and and be a player.
And this is, Bully, it does feel like we're speaking to a different Nick Aldis today than we've spoken to before.
I can tell you for a fact we're speaking to a different Nick Aldis. I've known Nick for a long time. I was a huge supporter of Nick in his early days in TNA. I liked him as a person. I liked what he was doing in the ring, despite the fact that he thought he might not have belonged in the ring. He had the look, and he learned at a very rapid pace. There was a moment in Nick's career, and Nick, you know how honest I am. And
sure.
There's a happy ending to this story,
yeah.
So it's really no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Nick had a little bit of a falling out because, as Nick would probably admit, sometimes there are so many people in your ear that you don't know who's telling you the truth. You don't know who's lying to you. You don't know who's a friend, an ally, or a foe. And so me and Nick had a little bit of a falling out for a couple of years there, but we sat down at the ECW arena about, 6 or 8 months ago. We had a very nice talk. As gentlemen, worked everything out, both on the same page. I can tell you that that Nick has matured significantly in the wrestling industry. I'm enjoying what he's doing in the ring, and I enjoy watching him backstage conduct his business, because conducting your business backstage is very much like a chess game. Most wrestlers handle it like a checkers game, and checkers is a very simple game to play. Nick handles his business as a chess game, and that's the way a true professional should. Not thinking about your next move, thinking 10 moves ahead. So kudos for you for quote-unquote growing up in the wrestling industry.
I appreciate that, and I understood that I had a lot of growing up to do, and you were one of the people that made that very clear, which was what I needed at that time, so I appreciate it.
What's the biggest misconception that people have about you?
Probably that I didn't pay any dues, or that I was handed opportunities. I started training at 17. You can ask the Knights how that training went. I worked harder than everybody else. I wasn't given anything, and I wrestled the holiday camp circuit, which involved 6 days a week if you were doing Butlins for Dixon at that time. And me and Bram, Tom, he's my best friend. We were the low men on that totem pole. We put the ring up, we took the ring down. We had to sit with the merchandise in the very back of the van when we wrestled. And all of the time, we would wrestle twice. And, we would have to go out under a hood and wrestle again and stuff like that. And we loved it. And when we got taken advantage of sometimes. We got, and we made no money, but we believed in ourselves and our ability to show people what we'd done, and we had passion for the business, and I always have. And yes, I got an opportunity to be on a television show. I took it, and I got it, and I saw it then as an opportunity to enhance my wrestling career and nothing else, because I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I didn't want to be a TV star. I wanted to be a pro wrestler, and that's why as soon as the opportunity came along, I walked away from that and went, used it to springboard my wrestling career.
We talked about it in break, but we mentioned 10,000 fans at All In September 1st, and in April, Madison Square Garden, 20,000 fans. These are things that outside the WWE, even with TNA, they were never able to come close to the numbers that you're going to see September 1st and what we possibly could see in April. And I was a little surprised, and you kind of looked at me and said you weren't. Do you really feel that way?
Yeah, I do, because I think there's a difference between saying that you could predict it and being to say that you could see it and believe it. I could see it and I could believe it. I would never have taken on the challenge of the NWA and the NWA Championship had I not believed that in some way, shape, or form I was going to manifest that vision into a reality and have this title be defended in a match that had a big fight feel in front of a big house. I would never have said it would be in 1 year. Well, less than 1 year. We're less than a year in here. I want it December the 9th. So I would never have said that. But, when things are firing on all cylinders and you stay true to your vision and you keep hold of that, but at the same time stay open to ideas and are willing to work with other people and help everyone's visions, intersect like we have, that's what happens.